You know what's crazy though? Because I'm sure you saw what Rogan said about you and the position they took when we're talking about you. And they're like, look, we need this guy.
Yeah.
Because he's got to keep talking about the stuff, and he's having a conversation with Brandon Schaap. I think it's Eddie. It's all these guys that are on there.
Friend Brian Callen.
Yeah. And then they're like, yeah, this guy, we got to protect what he has to say. But then Jake Paul said, I don't roll with Tate. I'd love to knock his ass out. He said something like that. Yeah. But then he said, but what I do support is, free speech. But then his brother said something else. His brother said, the shit that Andrew Tate says will have a ripple effect much more dangerous than you can imagine because his narrative is truly hateful. His rhetoric has extreme negative energy in it, and it will affect impressionable young people that won't show for years from now. And it's dangerous. Now, this is what he said,
this
right?
Is Logan Paul, you're saying?
But I want to say this before you comment on it. And then Junior supported you, Tucker supported you. I think the guys that like debate and comedians, people who appreciate humor, can understand that some of the stuff you're saying is funny as hell. You could be a comedian if you wanted to, but a person has to really pay attention to the comedy. But, some can run with it, some cannot run with it. Yeah. When you hear the people that support and don't support you, how do you process that?
So first things first, I want to make it very, very clear that Logan Paul is absolutely not really a tool of the Matrix. He's a bought and sold individual with no soul. He doesn't stand up for anything, and he doesn't mean anything he says. He gets pieces of paper from Susan or whoever else telling him what he's allowed to say on his channel to retain it.
You believe that?
100%. Not only do I believe it, he's proved it himself. He will flip-flop on any issue. He can be bought and sold. The dude's a bitch. Logan Paul is a bitch, and I will say that here publicly. If anyone wants, I'll fight him for free. The guy's an idiot.
No money needed to fight Logan Paul.
Logan Paul doesn't believe in any of the things he says. Logan Paul is a man, if you ever were unfortunate enough to consume his content, I get sent clips of it all the time by people mocking him. As soon as something comes out, whether it's Harry Styles wearing a dress, whether it's Lil Nas twerking on the devil, whether it's this, he just sits there and goes, yeah, this is great. Yeah, this is great. He is a talking piece. He is the mouthpiece for the agenda. The people have come along, people who are trying to force a narrative, and they said, look, we need to have some degree of control over the exact demographic that Tate has control over. We're going to use Logan Paul and attempt to use him. And he sits there and just purports the bullshit points of view that the whole Hollywood establishment want him to purport. He doesn't believe in the things he said. He's told what to say. And because he was canceled before and it emotionally destroyed him, he sat on camera crying his eyes out like a little girl instead of being a man about it. He is so fearful of the mob and so scared of being canceled again that he's going to sit there and say anything he's told. He doesn't believe that shit. Before I was canceled, him and his boyfriend Mike did endless videos supporting me, laughing about me, saying how funny I was, tagging me on Instagram, inviting me places, etc. The second I'm canceled, they flip reverse it and shit themselves because they don't want to get canceled too. They are children. That's all they are. So Logan Paul's a bitch. That's the first thing about Logan Paul. And what's actually been interesting about this whole cancellation thing is it hasn't negatively affected me in any serious way because I've been saying on podcasts for years, I know a cancellation is coming. I knew it was coming. I knew that as I got more popular and more powerful to a degree that it was going to come. But what it has done is it has awoken the world to anyone who's perspicacious enough to pay attention to learn which individuals out here in the social media space actually have character and believe what they say and which are completely bought and sold and are tools to the Matrix. The people who have decided to stand up for me and say, no, this is bullshit are people who have to some degree credibility. You know, this is people who say what they truly believe. But the people who were totally a fan and then post cancellation shit themselves in 180 and to get a new piece of paper to talk from, that should tell out the public out there exactly who's controlled and whether these people have a genuine narrative that they're trying to report on the world. And it's interesting. Logan's one of them, and there's a few others. But I'm glad it happened just for that alone, because it's actually very clear. If you go to Logan Paul's last podcast where he's discussing me, all of his fans, and we'll talk about fans and viewers in a minute because I think they're very different things. All of his fans, which he has none of, all of his viewers are sitting there insulting him, saying, bro, you're a fucking bitch. Like everyone, all of his own watchers are calling him names because it's so transparent and so obvious what he's doing.
Fans versus viewers.
Fans versus viewers, very different things. So he doesn't have any fans. He has viewers. And Susan and the Matrix and the people in charge of social media companies are like, okay, we've set our media machine. Let me ask you guys questions as professionals. Let's assume, as professionals, let's assume what I'm saying is correct. Let's assume that the social media companies, when they banned me, set their media machine to all release thousands of news articles at the same time, trying to convince the world I'm an evil man. If they had that degree of power and influence, which I think we can all probably agree they do, don't you think they'd take their number one talking piece to the demographic, which is my fan, and give him a piece of paper and tell him what to say? Does that not make sense? Does that make sense to say, well, we told all the news to say Tate's bad. and all of his fans are 18 to 25-year-old men. Who do we have on YouTube who obeys us like a little cuck who speaks to 18 to 25-year-old men? Logan Paul. Okay, Logan, here's your piece of paper. Do you want to get canceled again, Logan? No, you don't want to get canceled, do you? No, Mom.
You're saying a call like that was made?
100%. The dude's a bitch. He 180'd from a super fan to talking about my rhetoric being dangerous
but
in 24 hours.
There's a difference between you saying who you think he is versus you making the speculation that he got called by somebody to say, here's a narrative we want you to take, or else we'll silence you.
Well, Logan is not capable of independent thought. So if someone didn't give him the narrative, he didn't think it up himself. The dude's an empty vessel. He says what he is told to say. Somebody, somewhere, told Logan what to say and what stance to take. We can argue whether it was a social media company, whether it was his manager who was fearful,
right,
whether whatever. But somebody sat with Logan and said, look, Tate's getting a lot of smoke. You were cool with him. Your boyfriend Mike was cool with him. He's getting a lot of smoke right now. You're going to bitch out. And he sat there and said, yes, sir. Yes, I will. Because he has no character or no integrity. If it was all the other way around, let's imagine he was getting canceled. And I truly believed it was unfair. I'd sit there on my own platform and say, this is bullshit. Because I'm not bought, sold, and owned. He's an owned individual. So he's always going to say what he is told to say. He's always going to sit on podcasts, speaking to the youth, promoting Harry Styles wearing a dress, saying that it's great that Lil Nas twerks on the devil in real time for our children to digest, and then say, I'm dangerous to the youth, because that's what he's been told to say. Logan Paul has absolutely no capability for independent thought. He has no character as a man. That's who Logan Paul is.
Now, you said he got canceled in the past. I don't think he ever got canceled. I think his channel was demonetized for 90 days, but they kept all his stuff up. He was never taken fully down, like you were fully taken down. They just kind of demonetized.
This is for the Japanese.
This is when he
death
did
forest.
the Japanese video where apparently he went to a place where
you commit suicide in Japan. Right.
Yeah, I'm not completely familiar with the absolute mechanics of its cancellation. All I do know is that he cried on television repeatedly. So the dude was obviously emotionally affected by it and is fearful of it. And when someone is scared of something, that's the tool you use to manipulate them.
Well,
he is scared of being canceled.
Because when this happened to you, you're 35 years old, right? You're a grown man. I know you like to joke. I'm an old man. I mean, you're in literally your prime, bro.
Correct.
When that happened to him, he was 23 years old.
Correct.
Right? This was 5 years ago. I think he's 27 now, 22, whatever. You've had a lot more life experiences and been in fights, literally, proverbially, all that, versus someone who's 23. I can see where you're coming from, being like he's been groomed by this virtual governments, these digital media companies.
He needs them.
He needs them. He's become a mouthpiece of them, is what you're saying.
He's a mouthpiece of them. He needs them. And you're right. He was younger at the time. I would like to think that Patrick has been through a much harder situation in his life at younger than 23 than cancellation and wasn't crying his eyes out like a little girl. So the dude's obviously emotionally soft. He needs them. And the reason he needs them is because Logan Paul doesn't have fans. He has viewers. And that's what's actually been highlighted to me significantly since my banning, that there's a massive difference between those two things. Logan Paul is a person who needs the platforms and needs the algorithms, and people will watch him, but they will sit there and most of them will call him names, but he will have views. That is different than having fans. When you have fans, look at me, for example, when I got canceled, they say, where's Tate? Where is he? I'll go anywhere he is. I'll download any app. I'll uninstall the other apps. I'll take his content and post it on the platforms they don't want him on. Where is Tate? That's a fan. And that's different. When you only have viewers, you need the algo. Yeah. I don't need the algo. As long as people know where I am, they're going to come. And it's a completely different scenario.
Whose playbook you think he's following? If you were to say, because isn't that the Hollywood playbook? Like you follow that playbook, and as long as because that's what you're speculating. He's following the playbook of, you follow our narrative, we're going to give you the world.
I think that since the dawn of human time, anybody who had power understood that it was a particular demographic which is going to become dangerous to their power mechanism in the future. It's not a new idea. The idea that the Romans would conquer a Greek city and kill all the boys and all the military age males, it's always been the same, right? Who's going to cause us trouble if we want to hold this city? These guys. We'll get rid of them. So nowadays, I think what they're trying to do is neuter this class. They're trying to neuter this class by affecting them mentally and affecting their mindset and affecting their ability to think critically. And if you neuter this class, you're far less likely to have a revolution when you do something crazy. Like, I don't know, like, for example, imagine for 2.5 years, you wanted to lock everyone in their houses because of the common cold. Let's imagine you were going to do something tyrannical. You would want to ensure that this class of individuals were so busy concerned with either being depressed or jerking off or being physically weak or distracted, so they didn't all stand up and go, wait, this common cold can't hurt me. And I just started my business and I ain't going bankrupt for this shit. They don't want that. So they're trying to neuter a certain class of people. I don't really want to talk too much in depth about who I think they are because I'm trying to stay alive and I would never kill myself. But it's certainly happening. And I think anybody with a brain can see the narrative is out there, and the narrative is being purported and accelerated by all mainstream media channels. And people who are allowed to have a platform, such as Logan Paul, have sold their soul, cut their dicks off, and they sat there and say, yes, I will say what you tell me to say. Please don't cancel me. I am a fearful individual. The dude is a punk. And if he ever meets me in the cage, I will destroy him in real time for free. And he knows that.
What about the brother?
Well, Jake, at least, well, this is the interesting thing about those two, right? Because me and my brother have become the most famous brothers on the planet. So there's also a degree of jealousy involved.
I was just going to ask that. You get the Tate bros and the Paul brothers, and it's like this balance of power that's being shifted, and this
Completely.
sort of this dance that's happening.
It's interesting, right? Because you had the Disney brothers, the Disney brothers, who gained a bunch of power and notoriety, and they were the most famous brothers on the planet, and they've now been usurped by my brother and I, who come from a very unfortunate background and grew up on the street and did everything ourselves. And obviously, the youth of the world today have an affinity and feel a synergy with us that they don't feel with the Disney brothers, because the Disney brothers had a very easy, privileged life. You know, they grew up relatively easily and privileged. If you get a Disney contract, then you become a YouTuber. You've never really known struggle. I mean, you've had it pretty good. So there's a degree of jealousy involved. Jake at least stood up for free speech. Jake has said some negative comments about me. I've said a few negative things about him, but I have nothing personal against Jake. And also I find it interesting that Jake and Logan are not even that close. They may pretend to be, obviously they're brothers, but Jake and KSI have beef. They're literally trying to hurt each other. Logan is KSI's best friend. When you ask Logan, who would he choose between KSI and his brother in a boxing match? He's like, oh, I don't know, man. He can't even choose his own flesh and blood over some fucking dude he met. Their whole relationship is weird. If you insult my brother or you have any kind of problem with my brother, you have a problem with me. That's on site permanent. Like me and my brother are like this, but they're not like that. They have this weird relationship and they've slept with each other's girlfriends and a bunch of weird shit. So I don't know what's going on with them guys.
Yeah, KSI did say, thank God Andrew Tate got banned. Go ahead. You were saying something?
I mean, we're talking about the Tate brothers.
Right.
And the Paul brothers, arguably the two most famous set of brothers in the world.
Right.
But you've got two sons, right?
Yeah. Well, listen,
similar age difference between these guys.
For me, here's what I like.
Yeah.
I'm a pro-competition guy.
Yeah.
Right.
The fact that he went on Rumble and he got 500,000 subs in 2 weeks, you know who wins? You know who wins?
The market.
The world wins.
Yeah.
The fact that he went on Rumble, got 500,000 subs. Good job for Chris for making that move, by the way.
We know
and we've had good conversations at the house with him. And he's making a move right now on our buddy, the guy we like, Russell Brand, and a few other guys.
Amazing.
But the stud, he's doing the right
Rumble.
thing. Yeah, he's
Amazing
doing the right
guy.
thing. Yes,
Amazing
no
guy.
question about it.
Amazing.
But
guy.
go back to this. I want both to be competing.
Completely.
I got two boys. I want the Tates going against Pauls to go against this.
Completely.
I run an insurance company. We have a lot of siblings that compete against each other. It's great for the market. But where I was going, I said, who is Logan Paul's playbook he's following, right? He's 27. The video you talked about, 23, when it was in December in 2017, I want to say, when he was in Japan. The video with him and his girl when, you know, the what do you call it? The belt. That when you got kicked off of Big Brother or whatever it was in 2016. But that video is from 2012. 10 years ago, he's 25. So 23, 25, you know, you're coming from that kind of an environment. You can kind of hold the two things at the same level of accountability. One is suicide. The other one is, you know, a extreme method of sexual, you know,
consensual
sex that, you know, it is what it is. But this is where I was going with it. Years ago, and I'm just trying to see, because, you know, the whole thing, what would Jesus do? Everybody has a WW something do, right?
Yeah.
So Logan, when he did the Japan thing, the story came out, he was talking about it openly, that the Rock's people said, hey, man, you got to distance yourself from him. And apparently what he told is Rock's people contacted to say, hey, delete all the pictures that we have together, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe he's going into wrestling. He's following Rock's footsteps. Yeah. Rock is definitely somebody that if he ever wanted to run for office, that's a guy that could do it if he wanted it. I think Logan's another guy, whether you like him or not. I think he's got the pedigree to one day run. It doesn't mean you're going to support his policies, but he is a guy that's going in the direction of one day running. 20, 30 years, he could do it. So maybe he's sitting there saying, what would The Rock do? He distanced himself from me. Well, maybe I got to stop defending this guy and I got to distance myself from him. I wasn't going on the angle of, you know, Hillary Clinton called her, all these guys. No, I was going more, what playbook is he following?
I understand exactly what you're saying, but I would disagree. And the reason I would disagree is because that requires a degree of thought and intellect that Logan Paul does not possess. else.
You think he's an idiot?
No, I know he's an idiot. He's not thinking that far ahead. He's literally, someone has told him, say this, and he says it. It doesn't matter. And it's not just me. There's been loads of examples, and I put it on my podcast on Rumble, where we went through all the times where something came up, some controversial subject that people were discussing, is this good for the public consciousness? And the answer was always basically no. Is this necessary for children to be consuming? The answer was always basically no. But it was purported by the Hollywood elites, and Logan was always the number one person sticking up for it. He is bought and sold by somebody, whether his management team, whoever they are, they think it's good for him to act this particular way. He does not think for himself. He says what he is told to say.
But isn't that Hollywood in general?
Completely.
Right?
The Matrix.
Exactly.
The Matrix. So we agree. The Matrix. The agents of the Matrix. Some minds are not ready to be freed. And those who are not ready to be freed are going to sit there and they're going to defend the system. What does Morpheus say himself? He's sitting there defending the system. Logan Paul is going to sit and pretend that the world is going to be a better place if you remove all opposing ideas. And he's going to sit there and say that because he's a moron. Anyone with a brain understands if you care about your children and your children's children, they need to live in a world full of healthy competition, exactly as you said. As soon as you remove all opposing viewpoints or all competition, you end in tyranny. And anyone with a brain will sit and say, if he had any kind of character, he'd say, I completely do not agree with what Tate says. However, deplatforming is wrong because of X. He doesn't have to talk about me or what I've said. He can sit there and say, no, deplatforming is wrong because we need to have opposing viewpoints, opposing ideals. Idea A, idea B, the truth is perhaps in the middle. He has no intellect.
You
He's
can
no
disagree with somebody.
He can't do that. He's not smart enough.
Yeah.
Tate's bad today. Okay, tell me when he's good again. He's a bought and sold individual. When my hero arc completes, because we're at a transition stage, when my hero arc completes, and much like Batman, people understand that we thought he was the bad guy, but we realized we needed him. And when I come back to save Gotham and the hero arc completes, you'll see him and his little boyfriend back on Instagram saying, Tate's funny, and swap again because it's allowed. That's all he is. He's
That's your prediction for him.
Not prediction, it's absolute matter of fact. Especially, it also couples in with the fact that he's extremely jealous of my brother and I's success because my brother and I's success is not based on the same successes that he enjoyed. His success is based on being a clown. That's why he has viewers. He puts on a Pokemon suit and he jumps around like a clown. He doesn't sit there and give ideas or say things that make people think to the point where they genuinely resonate with your mindset. He's not intelligent enough for that. He's a performing clown as opposed to a philosopher. So they're different opposite things, and he knows that, and it upsets him. He can't sit in front of a camera by himself and say words that are going to inspire the crowds of any city in the world to shout your name. If I were to walk through Madrid right now, there would be young people shouting my name, Top G, Top G. That's because of what I say. Mm-hmm. He puts on a Pokemon suit and does a dance. He's an entertainer. He's not a thinker.
Did we not just have that conversation yesterday?
They're different things.
Right. And this is sort of to your credit. We were having this conversation because we knew we'd have this sort of dialogue. And he said, Pat was asking me, Adam, what do you think? I said, you got to understand something about my perspective on Tate is 95% of what I've seen about Tate is camera to the face, him talking and spitting game.
Right.
When you're talking about the Paul brothers, it's fighting, dancing, all sorts of whatever. Right. I've never seen you in the ring. Yeah. I've seen your highlights, but I've never seen that. Yeah. So people know your rhetoric. They know what you're saying. And whether they agree or disagree, you're known for what's coming out of your mouth versus they're known for antics.
And that's the difference between a fan and a viewer.
That's what goes back to your
initial point. He has viewers because he's a clown. Clowns can have viewers. That's fine. And you need an algorithm and you need a platform for that. But if you have genuine fans like I do, they ban me. People are like, to this day, where is Tate? And they will go anywhere I am. Anywhere I am, they will come because they don't believe they can find my rhetoric or my ideas somewhere else. If you ban Logan Paul, they can find another moron to jump around in front of a camera for you. They can promote someone else inside of their algo and steal his entire audience inside of a week. He can disappear and they can replace him. He knows that. That's why he says what he's supposed to say. If I stop being the performing clown, the new performing clown comes. The algo favors him. They put him up there and he does a stupid dance and he gets all my viewers. I'm a completely different kettle of fish. Different story.
That was a great perspective of entertainer versus thinker, right? I mean, when you talk about, let's just say there's a dialogue about Joe Rogan, what are you talking about? So the other day, Joe had this guest on, and this person, and Joe said this, you're having a dialogue with another person. But if you talk about, the other day, man, Logan did this one video, it's hilarious. So that's where he's going is one is creating dialogue, the other one is creating entertainment. I can see that. And by the way, one thing, the day you got banned, we wrote up a story and we posted it on Twitter. And I said, so this guy's a threat to society, the way they're presenting it, right? Tate is a threat to society.
Question
Fine.
mark.
And I'm gonna read all the things that you said because I want the audience to hear it. Some of it is uncomfortable probably for you to hear.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to read it because I want the audience that maybe hasn't heard all of it see it. But to me, when you say threat to society as a father of 4, when I watch Little Nas X making out with the devil on a performance and you're saying that's creative, then you really do want to hurt the family nucleus if you're okay with that.
Yeah, correct.
If a Cardi B gets up there and says, who cares about your body count?
Right.
Go make your money if you got to make your money. And other girls are
doesn't
like,
matter if you're a stripper,
who
if you're a
cares about
sex
my body
worker, it's
count?
all
I'm
good.
gonna
Go get your bag, girl. Right?
Or O.J. Simpson, who did what he did, and he's on Twitter giving fantasy football, or Khamenei or Putin or all these guys who are out there giving their commentary.
Right.
You're worried about this guy because he's a womanizer, because he's got now a complete different conversation to have. But I want to read this.